Ella will have done it right.
I hope so.
With faith.
We've got 3 that have germinated.
Oh yeah. Oh good. Yeah, the main thing about the compost is it needs to be specifically for seed sowing, because you can get ones for the later stages in plant life. Yeah. So you'll find that the seed setting compost or seed sowing compost is quite fine and loose, so the roots can get down easily when the seeds germinate. Yeah. If you have a compost that's sort of quite coarse, sometimes some of the seeds struggle, especially the smaller seeds. Yeah. And obviously you want it to be peat free. The three key things that your seeds require, and I call it the MOT, is moisture, oxygen and temperature. So it needs the right amount of moisture, it needs oxygen, and your seed will need the right temperature to germinate. If it's too cold, most seeds won't germinate at all, and they'll just rot in the damp compost. If it's too hot, they'll dry out and you'll lose them through the heat. So it's about getting it sort of just right, just keeping an eye on them once you've got them started. But yeah, just remember MOT, moisture, oxygen and correct temperature. To help you with your temperature and that sort of thing, there's always a guide on the back that'll tell, on the back of your seed packet, that'll tell you what sort of temperatures you're looking for to help the germination of the seed. There's loads of information on most packets of seed, but sometimes if you buy them off the internet, you'll just get a packet and it'll not really tell you a great deal, so you might have to do a bit of research. Another key thing with seeds as well is the depth that you set them at. Again, follow the instructions on the packet. If there aren't any instructions on the packet, as a rule of thumb, you can set seeds too deep, but it's difficult to set them too shallow. So if you've any sort of doubts about it, always try and set your seed at least as deep as the seed is itself, as the depth of the seed. So that seed there, on the packet it'll say to bury that 2 inches deep, but if you set it at least as deep as the seed itself, it should germinate and do okay. If you set it too deep, it won't get any light, and it'll struggle to get to the surface before it runs out of steam, and it'll die or it'll rot. So as you can see, there's lots of different sizes of seeds. So I'll just lay a few out on the palm of my hand so you can see them. So I've got 6 different seeds here, and they're all going to be set at different depths, and it can quite often depend on the size of the seed itself. So we've got a broad bean seed, and as you can see, that's quite a large seed, and that'll be set 2 inches deep. We've got a Borlotti bean, which is a climbing bean. Again, set that somewhere between 1 inch and 2 inches deep. A winter squash seed, that'll be set between 1 inch and ½ inch deep. A nasturtium, which will be set ½ inch deep. And then you've got a smaller seed, which is a leek seed. Now, unusually for the size of seed, that again is going to be set sort of ½ inch deep. If you're going to set it in a garden, you might even set that even deeper. It's just the variety that it is. But as you can see, the seeds vary in shape, size, colour. As you garden for a few years, you'll learn certain types of seeds, the ones that you grow each year, and you'll also learn the leaves when they come through, when they germinate. We talk about labelling and what have you, or shall we talk about containers? Yeah. So we've talked about the actual seeds themselves, so we're going to talk about how we actually set your seeds. So the first thing you need obviously is something to set your seeds in. There's lots and lots of different containers and propagators that you can buy online or in the shops. These are just a couple of examples. So they all tend to come with a base. Make sure that your base has got drainage in. If you're going to grow in this, for example, it's got a solid base, so what you need is a tray to fit inside it that's got drainage in it. Otherwise your plant will drown. It won't drain the water away. So make sure you've always got good drainage in the bottom of your container. Your lid obviously should fit snugly, but as I said earlier, your seeds do need oxygen, so what you need to have is a ventilation on the top. If you've not got that ventilation, you can always just prop them open or take the lid off just once a day. I tend to do that anyway, just to check that the seeds are germinating and coming through. So that's one particular type. You can sit it on your windowsill above a radiator, or in a nice bright south-facing window, so you get some sun in there. This is just a different variety of the same thing, which got 3 different containers in. Again, you've got your little container, little tray that sits in there. It's got drainage holes in. You've got your ventilation on the top, and they range from £10 up to whatever. You can get them with heated pads in the bottom that are really expensive. Personally, I think they're great, but you can make your own quite inexpensively. So I'll just show you some of the sort of things that you can do yourself. So that's an old mushroom container, and all I've done is punch some holes in the bottom. That's a top, or sorry, that's a tray that's had sort of fresh chicken in, or it might have had strawberries in or something like that, and you'll find that it'll just fit on top, and you've got exactly the same thing that you've paid £10–15 for, and it'll do exactly the same job. The only thing to remember again is to take the top off every so often, just to make sure you get some oxygen in there, some ventilation. If you notice that it's getting condensation in it, that's not a bad thing. It just means it's getting warm. But again, take the top off. You might want to dry it out, stop any diseases getting in there, and then just pop it back on. As I say, I check them most days anyway, if you just get into the habit of doing it. So that's one that you can easily get yourself. Another one, I think this had donuts in it or something, and again, that'll just fit on a larger tray. Again, it doesn't have to fasten on, you know, it just sits on. That'll keep the heat in, lets the light through. That's the thing, the top one does need to be clear, and that'll do exactly the same job as your £10, £15 propagator from a shop. Same with labels as well. If you want to label them up, I tend to keep the labels each year, just wash them off. They're bought ones. These are ones I've just made from an old plastic bottle, just chopped them up. You can write on it just the same, stick it in your compost, and it does the same job, completely free. You're reusing your plastic, and that'll last forever. And again, if you write on it in permanent marker, use the same label next year. Just keep them in a tray with your seeds. The other sort of trays that you might use for setting seeds, especially your larger seeds, or seeds that you're going to set out in plugs, are your modular trays. Now these can come in many shapes and sizes. That's a typical one that you can buy. You get about 5 of those for a couple of quid. And again, they're quite flimsy, but they'll last you 2 or 3 seasons at least if you look after them. Give them a good wash before you reuse them, and they just sit in your tray. They've all got drainage holes in the bottom, and they just sit in there. What you can do as well, if you buy quite a few plants from garden centres, etc., or supermarkets, they tend to come in these things. It's exactly the same as you've just paid a couple of quid for from the shop. And again, just wash them out, look after them, reuse them, and again, you're saving on plastic. And there's loads of different shapes and sizes. Trays like that, good for things like beetroot, starting beetroot off, or your larger half-hardy plants for your flower bed. That one, that'd be great for things like broad beans, or even your courgettes, or things like that, just to give them a good start. Because the black ones can't be recycled, as far as I know. The green ones, they'll be recycled, but if you can use those for 2 or 3 years before you recycle them, it saved you money and it saved the environment. Still going past.
Whoa, there's actually a spider.
I told you. So now we come to the best bit. The most exciting part of gardening for me is actually setting the seeds and seeing what you can germinate. What people find most difficult is the really tiny seeds that you set on the surface of compost, and in particular the watering of them. The easiest way to get the water into the compost is to actually do it before you set the seeds on top of the compost. So use a seed tray and just half fill it with water, and stand your plant pot that you're going to use for your seeds, or a tray, in there, and let it soak up the water until the top of your compost is actually wet. You can see that's now a different colour to that, and it's actually wet. So I'm going to take that out now because it's quite heavy and soaked up the water. I've also got one here that's a tray variety, so I can show you both sorts. Now I'm going to set these Antirrhinum seeds first, and they're actually almost like dust. So they are going to sit on the top, and because they're so small, we don't cover them over, because if you exclude the light, they won't germinate. So I'm going to carefully just tap the packet, and just as I'm watching the seeds, I can see them rolling down the packet onto the surface of the compost. And I'm just going to make sure I get them all out. There's only about 20 seeds in here, so there's just a couple more seeds. So those seeds are on there now. There's nothing left in the packet. I will label those later. So you don't need to do anything else with that now. All you need to do is to keep it warm. So with that, what I'm going to do is use the cheapest propagator known to man, which is a plastic bag, a clear plastic bag. So when you've done your grocery shopping and you've emptied your apples out your plastic bag or whatever it is, you bought them in, you can just pop that on there. You can put an elastic band around it, just keep it tight, but I tend not to bother. I just sit the plant on it, the pot on it, and that, again, if you put that on a warm windowsill every day, just take the bag off, you'll find that it does get condensation in it. Just shake the water out and then pop it back on, and as soon as your seeds germinate, you can take the bag off. You don't want to leave the bag on when the seeds are coming through, because it'll be too hot. Once they germinate, once it's germinated the seeds, it's done its job, you can remove it. Try not to use the bag again for the same purpose, because the condensation might start to turn into the breeding ground for diseases. But that's that one. So we're going to set some dianthus seeds on this one. Again, because they're quite small and they just need a very fine covering of compost, I've done the same process as I did for the Antirrhinum. I've let the compost soak up the water. You can feel that it's sodden with water. It's not dripping out, but it's wet through. So again, these are quite small seeds, but they are a little bit bigger, and these just want a very, very fine covering of soil or compost on the top, as you can see. The thing is as well, try and space them out, don't put them all in one corner. The other thing is about watering them afterwards, especially with seeds this size, is you'll find that it doesn't matter how hard you try to be careful, the seeds will all wash to one end of the tray, and then they'll all grow in one small area, which is fine. They'll germinate, but they become leggy, and when the seedlings become leggy, they tend to what we call dampen off. And by leggy I mean they just grow tall and spindly. And the stem, once the stem's damaged, because damping off, they tend to go damp down towards the compost and they just fall over, and once that's happened, you can't save them. So again, I'm just taking a pinch of seed and just spreading them round. So I'm just going to cover this. You can get a sieve, but even with my grubby hands, all you need to do is just basically shake your hand over the top. You can see the compost nice and fine anyway, and all I'm doing is just spreading a little bit of that compost over the top, and that is just enough for those seedlings. Now you can use other products called vermiculite or perlite, which are like very fine white. It almost looks like there's a bit of it in this compost. It's this little white product here, and all you do is just sprinkle that on top, and that lets the light through because it's sort of translucent, if you like if you were doing sort of succulent plants or maybe rockery plants in a house leeks, maybe in a pot. You can add that to it, and it helps the drainage, like as you said. It's really good for that, and it's quite lightweight as well. There's no weight to it, so if you've got a large amount, it's easier for when you're moving things about, which is another plus to it. But it does crush up. But yeah, again, it's quite expensive. So again, if you're on a budget and you don't want to lay out for it, yes, it's good, but you don't always need it. Some seeds are more notorious for being difficult to germinate. Things like parsnips are you'd normally set 5 seeds for every parsnip that you want to grow, because they can be difficult to germinate. And then you'll have seeds that aren't what we call, they're not viable, which means that whatever you do for them, they're not going to grow anyway. It's just nature. They're just, they're just not going to produce anything for you. It's looking after your seeds. It's better to buy fresh seed every season. There's no doubt about it, because you do tend to have a better success rate, as in germination wise. But if you've got a packet of 1,000 seeds, which you might have, sort of things like Mesembryanthemum, which is a half-hardy annual, you wouldn't set 1,000 seeds in one season.
So you can save them.
Yeah.
As long
So
as you keep them dry.
I've used Mesembryanthemum seeds up to 5 years after I first bought them, and they've still grown. You don't get the massive success, but you'll get enough, because you'll set 100 seeds and you might only want 20 plants.
Yeah.
So if you get 20% success rate, you've got enough plants. But it's same with saving seeds from certain plants. You can do it with some, but it's more difficult to do with others. So things like climbing beans, you can as long as you let them dry off on the plant itself, they'll tend to be pretty successful. Things like flowers like foxgloves, you get a million seeds from one foxglove plant. It'll do the job for you. It'll just send them round the whole of your garden. So yeah, but the main thing is looking after your seed once you've used it. Well, when you bought it, but also when you've opened the packet and used it.
Yeah.
A lot of seed packets come with a little foil pouch inside. Always put your seeds that you've not used back into that foil. Make sure there's no air in it if you can help it. Squeeze the air out, fasten it up tight, pop it back in its packet so you know what plant it is, what variety, and then store it in a dark, dry, relatively cool place. I keep mine in a little tray in a drawer in the front room, which is away from any radiators or anything like that. It's completely dark, so dry, dark, and no moisture, and obviously not too much heat. Right, so we'll do that then. We'll set a few tomatoes. I've got a variety here called tie-dye green, so we're going to grow some of those. So again, on the back of the packet it should tell me how deep to set them. 1/8 of an inch, so we'll go with that. So I'm just gonna grow them in the pot. We only want, this year we're just going to grow one of each variety, so I'm only going to set about 3 seeds. Now it depends whichever size pot you want to set them in. I'm just going to set them in this one. So again,
as long as they've got enough depth.
Yeah, that's the thing with the tomato. I want it to have a good root system, so that's why I'm going with this one rather than that. I could get 3 in there, but there's not much root depth. And with the tomatoes, you want a good root system. So I'm not going to water this at the minute. I'm going to set the seeds on the top of the compost. So always firm your compost down. You don't want to firm it too much, because you need the oxygen in the soil, but you don't want lots of pockets in it as well. So I know there's quite a lot of seeds in here, so I'm just going to tip some out into my hand. There's 3 there, so we'll just set those 3. So because they're quite a decent size, I'm just going to set them around the edges of the pot, sort of just in a triangular shape, obviously, because there's 3 of them. And it says to cover them with 1/8 of an inch, so that's not very much at all, but again, same process. Just cover them over. And what you need to make sure you do with any seed really is to make sure that it's got some contact with the compost, so that it can draw the moisture from the compost. And again, just tap it down, just a little gentle pressure with the back of your hand, and that's that done. And again, get a label in it, give it a water. If you're going to water it from above, always use a watering can with a rose. That's what we call the rose. Because if you try to do it with a can without that, you'll end up just washing all the compost and the seeds out. So do it from quite a distance as well. So you don't want to be there, you want to be sort of up there, and just give it a quick water. You'll know when it's got enough, because the pot will be heavier. You'll be able to tell the difference. It doesn't have to be so it's sort of absolutely drowned. It just needs to be moist. If it's sat in water, there's no oxygen in the soil. And as we've said, part of the MOT, you need oxygen. So you need to make sure that there's some oxygen still in there and it's not just completely sat in water. As I said, it'll just drown them and they'll rot. They'll never germinate. So again, same with that one. I'll pop that into a bag once I've watered it. Same process, onto a warm windowsill. Check it every day, just to make sure that as soon as they come through, you take the top off.